So recently there's been some drama and speculation about Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch C923, specifically regarding this batch's consistency from bottle to bottle. We're gonna get into that in today's video. I'm gonna do a side-by-side tasting to kind of test the theories that are swirling around out there. But first, it's just worth mentioning that Elijah Craig C923 is one of the most hyped, talked about, and awarded bourbons of the year. It has found its way into so many top 10 whiskey of the year lists, from whiskey tubers to reviewers to reputable publications online, not the least of which is BreakingBourbon.com, who recently awarded this their #1 whiskey of 2023. And the excitement of that award and the excitement of talking about an Elijah Craig Barrel Proof batch like this really comes from the fact that this is an affordable and relatively available bottle from Heaven Hill. This particular batch comes in with a 13-year, 7-month age statement, which is really, really impressive when you consider the fact that, you know, the age statement goes away on Elijah Craig Barrel Proof this year. We see a drop in age for B523, and then this one comes out swinging with a crazy high age statement. But it's also the first time that we're getting a 130 plus proof batch in quite a while. This one coming in at 133, which is 66.5% ABV. So that's kind of setting the stage for this comparison, talking about these rumors, talking about a batch that is supposedly really good, although for me, when I tasted this bottle and I reviewed it a few months ago, I actually was not blown away. And a lot of people called me crazy because they said, listen, this is the whiskey of the year. You're an idiot. Why are you saying that it's hot, that it, doesn't have enough flavor here, or, the nose is closed off? These are some of the criticisms that I had of this bottle. Well, this just might be the reason. And in this video, this comparison is gonna kind of hopefully open my eyes and tell me whether I was crazy or maybe I'm not. Maybe there really are some consistency issues. Now, the disclaimer I need to add before we get into the specifics of these rumors and do this side-by-side tasting is that I have absolutely no idea behind the scenes at Heaven Hill how the batching and bottling process works for a product like Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, where you're probably dealing with several hundred barrels being dumped into what I would imagine is a very large vessel to be blended and then bottled after the fact. Some people are speculating that throughout this process, there may be different dump dates or bottling dates, I should say, with different, I guess, micro batches along the way. And the rumor is that those micro batches can be then identified through the laser code on the back of the bottles. Those two laser codes that are being talked about are A22 as the first 3 digits and A23 as the first 3 digits. Now, this bottle of mine is A22. And I know this is confusing enough, right? We're dealing with alphanumeric codes on the front and back of the bottle, but we are talking about the laser code on the back, not the batch identifier on the front. My bottle is A22. This is speculated to be the worst of the 2 laser codes, the one that is not as good, whereas A23 is thought to be the better of the 2 and the one that many people are hyping up to be the whiskey of the year. Now, of course, people are saying, well, I have an A22 and it's really good, or I have an A23 and I don't like it so much. So I have absolutely no idea what to believe, which is why today I have my bottle with the laser code A22, this sample from William Molnar. Thank you for sending this along, man. This is an A23, and we're gonna compare them side by side and see if this theory of micro batches and different bottling dates and all this kind of stuff holds any water, or if it's a bunch of crap. And maybe I just don't like this batch as much as other people, because for me, this probably would not make my top 10 whiskey of the year list. It is a good product. It does have a great age statement. It does have great proof and all that kind of stuff, but it just didn't fare that well for me. And I've tasted it and tasted it and tasted it on so many live streams. As you can see, I'm almost out of this thing. And it did improve slightly with air, but it never got to that point that people were talking about. So without further ado, we've set it up with the background about the bottle. We've added the disclaimer that I don't know how their batching process works. Let's get into this tasting now. I'm gonna start with this A22 laser code. We're gonna start there and then move on to the A23 laser code, which again is supposed to be the better of the 2 micro batches. Let's see what we get here on the nose for A22. So classic Heaven Hill bourbon type profile, down the middle caramel on this one. And it does have again, some of those characteristics I talked about in my first review video, which was feeling a little tight, a little closed off and alcoholic on the nose, where you can tell there's something really good underneath, deep, rich oak, leather, caramel notes, all that kind of classic bourbon goodness. But it's just being covered up by this layer of ethanol on the top of the glass. If you try to dig down beneath that, it does feel a little bit like it's got like this kind of burnt orange type note to it, which is something that I've noticed on many recent batches of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. We tend to get a little bit of this burnt quality to it. Yeah, and I guess some of the older batches pre-2020 maybe had a little bit more of a fruity profile to them. That's not really the case here. This is more of that burnt orange and then just classic down the middle bourbon. Anyways, let's go to the palate now and see what we get. Cheers. This is a very, very solid pour on the palate. A lot of the heat that I had a problem with the first time around, where I really felt like this got to the upper limit of being comfortably hot before it kind of crosses that threshold into being a little too alcoholic. I feel like that's rounded off just a bit on the palate, which is really nice. Now we're gonna move on to A23 before we then go probably back and forth a few times to try to kind of suss this thing out and see what the differences are. But now let's take a look at this one on the nose and see what we get. It's noticeably different, but it's not like we're in a completely different world. So what I mean by this is that there are those same very classic notes. It has the intensity on the nose, but the A23 bottle here does not have that closed off feeling on the nose where I can't get below it to get to the aromas and the notes that are going on underneath. You're getting a lot more fruit from A23. You're getting a lot more vanilla from A23. So that's interesting. To me, this has a raspberry note to it that kind of reminds me of some of the Lucky 7 14-year proprietor, like the really great ones. Barrel 72 is one that comes to mind. This raspberry note in the A23 laser code batch, just phenomenal. Plus, it has a beautiful aged vanilla note that typically only comes from much older whiskeys, like 15, 17, 18 years old, that kind of range. This has that vanilla note to it. So I don't want to overstate it, but as it stands right now on the nose, A23 is definitely, for me, a better batch, a more balanced batch, a more complex batch, and just subjectively more enjoyable to nose. Anyways, let's go in now for the palate and see what we get. Cheers. That is a completely different beast on the palate. The development from front to back as this thing hits you, it never feels like it's spice for the sake of spice or heat for the sake of heat. And A22 absolutely gives me those impressions. This immediately delivers vanilla, fruit, raspberry, classic caramel, a little bit of that peanut butter Heaven Hill note, tons of funky leather, funky oak. It hits you immediately on the front of the palate, and it develops consistently from front to back. There are not a lot of big waves, big crashes, weird bumps along the way. It's a consistent development from front to back with, in my opinion, more enjoyable tasting notes, more complexity, more balance. So I feel like some of these rumors might be true, that there's some sort of consistency issue. And again, I don't know exactly what it is because I don't have any idea how this process works at Heaven Hill. I have to say, for me right now, one nose, one sip of each of these glasses, I think that A23 could be my whiskey of the year, 100%. And A22 in no way would break my top 10 because of its balance issues and the fact that it almost feels younger in some ways, younger, more closed off. And those kind of things can just happen from the way that you blend the whiskey. And I think there are blending discrepancies, it feels like, between these two. For the sake of science, we're gonna go back and forth one more time and see how this stacks up. So just a quick side-by-side nosing. Here we go. Yeah. What jumps out of the glass here on A23 now, as I do the side-by-side, is so much more oak and leather. This is spice, tons of spice, ethanol, kind of burnt orange, just more burnt notes all the way around. And then A23, oh my God, it's, the more I do this, the more stark the differences become. The raspberry and now like this dark cherry note, a little bit of this floral element coming into play. And like I said, so much leather and funky oak, an easy win. If this was a 10 out of 10, let's just say for the sake of comparison, this is a 10 out of 10. This, for me, is like a 6.5 or 7. I mean, the differences are growing and stacking up. All right, one more sip of each, then we're gonna wrap this up. Look, A22 is not a bad bourbon by any means, but it has some flaws. Where it shines for me is in the finish. I think the nose is not that great. The palate is better than the nose because it's not as closed off. And then the finish is a lot of those funky aged oak, aged leather kind of elements that you're gonna get from a 13-year, 7-month bourbon. So it does improve as it goes. Now let's do A23 one more time. And that to me, it drinks way under proof from A22. It's actually kind of crazy. If I call this 133 proof, which it is, this thing drinks like 123. It's so concentrated, full of flavor, without any alcohol burn or any unnecessary alcohol burn. And that balance from front to back, I know I'm just reiterating myself at this point, so we're gonna wrap this video up. But for me, the rumors are true. If I had to tell you to buy one of these, the answer is easy. Be specific when searching this bottle out. Buy the one that says A23. I don't know if there are other subtle number differences throughout the rest of the laser code, because it is, you know, the laser code has more digits than that. There are like 6 more digits after the first 3. So I don't know if there's like a cutoff point before you go from A22 to A23. No idea. You know, kind of buy at your own risk. But for me, for my peace of mind, I would be searching out A23 bottles specifically, and I would buy a case of them. I mean, this is incredible whiskey, and this is good whiskey. Do with that information what you will. Let me know what you think in the comments if you've had the chance to try either of these, if you've had the chance to do this comparison, because I think it's a really interesting comparison, and it's now making me look at other batches of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof and wonder if some of those other rumors of different batches where some people say, this one tastes like Sharpie to me, this one doesn't, if those are also some similar issues that we're dealing with here. No idea. I guess I'm gossiping now, putting more speculation and more rumors out onto the internet. Whatever, I'm just saying what I knows and what I taste here. And I'm gonna have to search out a bottle of A23 or 6. So cheers guys, see you next time here on Drums and Drams.